Hello, and welcome everybody to another episode of Rise Up the Show. Hope everybody had a great Labor Day weekend. I know I labored. I was at work for a half a day. Had to get started on the week. I don't know about you guys, but I got a head start on the week, but I got to definitely enjoy a half day. And today we got a special episode. I got my friend David Bear on the other line over there. David, how are you today?
Khaled, it's so good to see you, man. I'm doing awesome.
Awesome. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
It's my pleasure. I've been actually looking forward to this conversation for a while. I know we haven't spoken in a while, and I'm stoked to see you in like about a month
Yes, sir.
in
Yes,
San
sir.
Jose together.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. So for those who don't know who David is, I had the pleasure of meeting David about 2 years ago. We met for the first time at Cloud Camp, and I was blown away. I got to sit in a talk with him and spend almost 2.5, 3 days with David and his now fiance Carol. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I got to spend a couple of days with you guys, and man, I was just you gave this talk on belief and how we create our own belief system, and I want to kind of open up the show talking about beliefs. And I know that because for you, that's some of the coaching you do with the entrepreneurs you mentor. For those that don't know David, he mentors entrepreneurs. He's an author. He runs his own live event, which I heard is very, very amazing and changes tons of lives. I definitely got to make it out there.
You're coming in March.
Yes, I will be there. And you're known as the mindset. That's your thing is mindset. That's your superpower. And I wanted to kick things off with belief and kind of talk to us about where do beliefs, how do we form our beliefs? How do we, because maybe I'm not wording it right, but for us, where do we see our perceptions reality, but where do we form our reality?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. And I think, for anyone who's been in personal development or high performance, we know our beliefs are important, right? We know it in same way, shape, or form, our beliefs are shaping our entire experience of reality. But I don't think we've ever, had a really in-depth conversation about what beliefs are. And so for us, the beliefs are the meanings that you're giving the experiences of your life. And so many of your beliefs were established at a time that we don't remember. In our early development stages, normally before the age of 7, before the prefrontal cortex is fully formed. And so we're having these experiences of life. It's we're observing or experiencing our parents having a conversation, and we kind of pick up that this conversation involves money, and we notice that our parents are arguing, or dad is angry, or mom is worried. And so we give this meaning to the experience, which is that money causes problems. Or, we're supposed to meet our friend at the drinking fountain when we're 5 years old, and our friend doesn't show up. And we just kind of we give a meaning to that experience. We come to a conclusion, which is that people let you down. And so what happens is we store that experience. So moment by moment by moment, not only as a child, but as an adult, you're recording every experience you're having in your life. You're experiencing life through your 5 senses, and arguably a 6th sense or extrasensory senses. All of that data and information is being ingested through the nervous system to the brain. The brain is recording all of it. Not only is it recording all of the senses around the experience, but it's recording the meaning that you give it. And so we can actually see that, from the time you're born with about 100 billion neurons. And by the time 100 billion neurons and about 100 billion synaptic connections. And by the time you're 7 years old, you've built out almost a quadrillion synaptic connections. You've built out this massive neural network in your brain. And a good part of that build out is just the storage of the memory and the meaning that you give it. So, when you're 17 years old and you're starting to think about making money, you come to the same conclusions. Money causes problems. And so we start to experience life according to the beliefs that we developed at a very, very early age. You're only paying attention to the parts of your life that match up with the belief that you have. You're ignoring everything that doesn't align with the belief that you have. And so in almost like a matrix-like reality, your experience of life becomes that which you believe. And again, your beliefs aren't just some sort of marshmallow fluff. If we could actually open up your brain and take a look at when you were thinking that money was hard to make, or that you can't trust people, or that you're not good enough, or that there's not enough time, we would see very specific parts of your brain lit up. Your beliefs are wired into the neural networks of your brain.
Wow.
So a big part of this conversation about like how to live a more empowered life, how to live a more joyful life, how to live a more resourceful life is for us to identify what beliefs that we've developed that aren't congruent with the life that we want, and to learn the tools and learn the technology to change those beliefs, which is actually changing the structure of your brain so that you dehabituate yourself from those limiting beliefs and you reacclimate yourself to empowering beliefs.
So I know we talked, so money, right? You mentioned money, and that's one that in my industry, and really in a lot of industries, money is the one belief people have a hard time with. I know, like from a sales perspective, they get stuck up on that. I know for Fit Pros, they get stuck up on that money question or asking for the sale due to whatever past experience or relationship they've had for money. How can someone overcome that or rewire that belief or their belief when it comes to money? Like, is there an exercise? Is there a set of questions? How can someone reshape and see the value in themselves when they're asking for that money?
Yeah, it's a much larger conversation. But just to be able to discuss it within the context of this conversation, when we meet someone who wants to have more prosperity in their life, who wants to have a more successful business, who wants to have more money, we want to take a look at what they believe about money, because the beliefs you have dictate three really important things. They dictate the thoughts and ideas you have on a moment by moment and day-to-day basis. So your thoughts and your ideas are always going to be in alignment with what you believe. So if you believe that money's hard to make, then you're going to be constantly thinking thoughts that are similar to money being hard to make, or you won't have any ideas that would put you in a position of making money easily. You won't have access to those ideas. The second thing is that what you believe literally shapes your perception of reality. So you'll just be you'll notice things that you'll move towards that'll produce a lack of money for you, really at an unconscious level. You'll get involved in business deals that won't produce money. You won't know why, but what's happening is you're only paying attention to those things that will produce an outcome that's in alignment with money being hard to make. You'll go out and you'll pursue those things, or those are the strategies that you'll try to implement in your business. And then the last thing is that, what we believe dictates the synchronicities and the coincidences that show up in our life. So life starts to show up in a way that is going to produce an outcome, which is money's hard to make. So it's very, very important, if you want to have a successful business, that you take a look at what you really believe about money. And if we uncover that you have a limiting belief about money, then we need to start exploring that. And we need to say, okay, got it. So first of all, what does it even mean? And Khaled, you and I can actually kind of play this game, because a lot of what's different about the transformational work we do is not trying to necessarily get you to come up with a new story or jump up and down and change your physiology or to come up with a nice reframe on something. But what does it even mean that money's hard to make?
What does it mean that money's hard to make?
Yeah, let's even narrow it down a little bit more.
Okay.
What does it mean for something to be hard?
It's inaccessible, or I can't reach it, or it's hard to get.
Got it. So if you think that something that is hard is inaccessible, right? Is it really true? In other words, is money ever inaccessible for any of us?
No.
It's not. Like, in other words, a lot of people think that things are hard, and we would go, well, what does hard mean? There are some things you might need to do. There's some skills you might need to develop. There's some time that might need to pass. But, is for example, creating an event like you've created that is a successful event and getting people to attend the event and putting cheeks in seats, is it hard, or does it just require a series of steps and energy and effort and time?
Steps, energy, effort, time.
Right. However, because the brain is a goal achieving machine, if you actually believe it's hard, do you know what it will become?
Hard. Yeah.
It'll become hard. So philosophically, we look at concepts like, is hard a real thing, or is it just a man-made concept? And since we're such powerful creators, if we believe in hard, things become hard.
Mhm.
In other words, if you look at the natural world, which of the trees is having a hard time growing? Is it hard for a squirrel to find a nut? Does the ocean have to do a lot of hard work to big wave on you? Are the clouds doing anything hard in order for them to, like, hard is a uniquely man-made concept that doesn't really mean anything. But now we make money hard to make. And again, because of the way the technology, the brain works, if you believe money is hard to make, money will become hard to make for you. So we start just taking a look at what people believe, and we start to see that oftentimes these are purely unintelligent concepts. And then when you can shift out of, gee, money's really hard for me to make, and instead you can get into, well, money's not hard to make. In order to make money, it just means that I need to put together a series of steps and take some action and put in some energy and some effort. Now we begin to dismantle the limiting belief, which has a profound impact on what people have access to. Because if you can stop thinking that money is hard to make, then all of a sudden you can have more ideas, more resource, more creativity, rather than sabotaging yourself and enrolling yourself into this idea that you can't make money.
Absolutely. And I think, and that's the thing, I think, you know, you mentioned the event, and I know you run an event as well. And I think that's you get to that sticking point. And this is kind of, we were talking about before we went on live, you know, that's where I was about a month ago, just kind of stuck, saying, man, this event is hard. And everything, it was funny, everything around the event all of a sudden became hard.
It's hard.
And then I talked to your wonderful fiance, Carol, and she gave me some ideas, and all of a sudden things started happening. As I started implementing some of these ideas, we got more people started registering. We got some more sponsors. So it's funny how your mind creates your reality when you start thinking of certain things, or how it can shift your reality when you start thinking other things.
Yes. And so the map we use around this is that whenever, and I'll just back up for a second. I've taught this so many times on interviews that those who are watching this for the third or fourth time are probably tired of it, but it's important to understand. You know, we don't want this to just be philosophical for people. We want it to be practical for people. So the idea is that there are only two states of being. There's beautiful states of being and there's suffering states of being. And you're either in a beautiful state of being or a suffering state of being. Moment by moment by moment, you're in one of those two states of being. Beautiful states are states like joy, curiosity, excitement, passion, calm, peace. And suffering states are states like anger, frustration, anxiety, overwhelm, jealousy. And so we know that moment by moment, we're in one state or the other, and you're never in two states at the same time. When you're in a beautiful state of being, you're connected to all of your power. And when you're in a suffering state, you've moved essentially into the fight or flight mechanism of an animal. That's you've disconnected from everything that makes you a human being. And so the name of the game of creating what you want is to live as consistently as possible from a beautiful state of being. That's where you have access to resource, creativity, inspiration, ideas, energy, health, vitality. It's where you're connected to intelligence itself. Some people call it God, higher power, infinite intelligence. That's in a beautiful state of being. The only thing that moves us into suffering is not the experience that we're having. It's not that I'm not making the amount of money that I'd like to be making. It's not that I don't have the number of people attending my event who I'd like to attend the event. What moves us into suffering is not the experience. There's no suffering inherent in any experience. Like I said, squirrels aren't stressed out. They're not going to find a nut. Clouds aren't comparing themselves to each other. You know, the bamboo tree is not going, am I growing at the speed I should be growing at, or am I too far behind? So it's not in the geometry of reality. The only thing that moves us into suffering is our own thinking. It's what causes all personal suffering. And I would suggest it causes all suffering in the world, because happy people don't hurt other people. But people in suffering go out and try to project their suffering onto other people. But all suffering is caused by one thing and one thing only, which is your own thinking. And what we found is that the quality of the thinking that causes suffering is 100% of the time that you're thinking something that's not true. So you're thinking you can't trust people, or you're thinking that your girlfriend shouldn't have said that or done that, or you're thinking that money's hard to make, or you're thinking that somehow if you don't put enough people in these seats, you're going to be a failure, or it's going to fail, or things will therefore never work out for you, or you're never going to be able to accomplish the vision you have for your life. All of those things aren't true. And so what's beautiful is that our Creator gave us an emotional guidance system that's designed to move us into suffering. You move into stress because you've disconnected from reality itself. You move into overwhelm because you've moved into some form of what we call unintelligent thinking. Because the truth is that moment by moment by moment, life is working for us in infinitely intelligent ways for our greatest growth, our greatest prosperity, our greatest evolution. The truth is that there really are no problems. The truth is that nothing can ever go wrong. So the moment you give a meaning to an experience that it's a problem, or it shouldn't be happening this way, or it's somehow going wrong, you move into suffering. And we use that emotional guidance system in our work to help us identify when we've disconnected from our personal power, and then to begin an internal inquiry around what we're thinking, and then to use a simple set of tools that we teach to realize that the thinking isn't true, to eradicate the limiting belief, and to move immediately back into your personal power. And if I was going to share, the number one thing, we have like an 8-figure funnel working for us right now in online marketing. Yes, we've designed a really good speak to sell strategy when I go out and I speak from stages. Yes, we've put together an event model and coaching programs, and we've certified other coaches in our work. You could look at all of that and say, Dave and Carol are really phenomenal strategists, which is why we've built a business so quickly in a very saturated coaching space. The truth is that we're actually doing the work that we teach. And because we're living in a beautiful state most of the time, and 10 years ago, I spent my whole life in a suffering state. I was a drug addict. I was an alcoholic. But through that journey of understanding suffering and figuring out how to live consistently in a beautiful state, we've been able to create in really phenomenal ways. And that's what we want for everyone else. And so if people want to grow their businesses, they want to make more money, really the number one thing we need to help them do is to learn this technology so they can operate from a beautiful state of being, because that's where you make money from.
And I know with a lot of the entrepreneurs and you work with and I work with, a lot of them, are spend a lot of most, they go into that suffering state when business isn't working, or that sale didn't come through, or they tie an emotion to whoever that situation. How does someone move out of suffering back into that beautiful?
So for example, you gave such a great example right here. So, we teach about transformation is in the moment. It's in the moment of the thinking. So here someone is, they're sitting in their home office like I am. Things aren't happening as fast as they think they should. Their bank account's not as big as they think it should be. Maybe they reached out to someone to establish a partnership and that person didn't get back to them. So all of a sudden it triggered this pattern of thinking where you're sitting here and you're looking out your window and you're like, I'm not as far along as I should be and my business isn't working. Well, when you think I'm not as far along as I should be and my business isn't working, does that move you into a beautiful state of being or a suffering state? Suffering, right? So what we teach is then you immediately know it's not true. And you would go, well, what's not true? Well, what's not true is that you're not as far along as you should be, or that your business isn't working. Now, what happens, Khaled, in the beginning is you're going, but I'm not as far along as I should be, and my business isn't working. And we would say, we know you've enrolled yourself in that unreality, but let's take a closer look at that. So if this is where you're at, should you be further than where you are? No, that doesn't even make any sense. You're exactly where you should be because this is where you are. The sum of all of the parts of the history of your life added up equal this moment and where you're at in your business. You shouldn't be further along than where you are. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't be able to create where you want to be. You can create where you want to be, but you can't create where you want to be from bringing denial of where you are and moving into suffering. So we help someone see that just the idea that I'm not as far along as I should be is unintelligent. It doesn't make any sense. And so when you're not aware, number one, of the thinking, it owns you. And even when you become aware of the thinking, if you don't have the tools to see how unintelligent it is, it owns you. But as soon as you realize that this idea, whenever it shows up, that you're not as far along as you should be, makes no sense, like you can't unsee it. It shows up for me all the time. Make no mistake. Every day, what shows up for me is I'm not doing enough. I'm not as far along as I should be. This is never going to work out. It's always there. It's part of the ancient mechanism. But the difference between how I'm living and perhaps someone watching this live stream is that I see it and I see that it doesn't make any sense. And the moment that you can see the unintelligent thinking that is the only cause of your suffering is unintelligent, the moment you actually see it, Like the brain reorganizes around it. There's literally a change in your neural networks. You no longer are able to live through that lens anymore, and the whole lens reshapes. And so the other part of it is like, my business isn't working out. Well, if that doesn't feel good, it's not true. And you would come up with all this evidence. You'd go, but Dave, I'm not making the money I want to make, and I'm not as big of a thought leader as I want to be. And I, tried this thing and it didn't work out. And all of these other people are having the success and I'm not having the success. And I've been doing it longer than some of them. And I would go, that may sort of all be true, but that doesn't mean your business isn't working out. Your business is working out just fine. Your business is working out. It's working itself out right now. This is what's called business working out, right? It's the journey of it. So what I'm suggesting is that the biggest problem in our business right now is the thinking that we are not as far along as we should be and that it's not working out, because that moves us into an unresourceful state. And you can't create from there. And it feels like shit. So when we work with entrepreneurs, they're always shocked because we just help them make sense of the unintelligence. And then all of a sudden their business starts to unfold. Well, why? Because you're no longer living in suffering. You can't create from there. And so many entrepreneurs are trying to create from a state of suffering. And it's caused by only one thing, which is these unintelligent concepts that you have to become aware of them because they're constantly going in the background. And then number two, you have to develop the skills and the tools to be able to actually see them for what they are, which is just the mechanism of the brain throwing off fear-based, problem-based opinions. And it's kind of like that movie Avatar. Like, you're just experiencing it from within the bodysuit of the human being. But don't let it own you. You don't have to listen to it. If we were to put it on your phone and walk around with it, you'd go, that's ridiculous. But we buy into it because it's in our head.
Yeah. I think you mentioned like awareness, right? And so this like journey of self-awareness. And I know for you, like going back 10 years ago when you were finding your own journey and going through your own self-awareness, like how this book, I'm gonna hold it up, played a huge part in your life. And this is kind of why I went and got it, because you recommended it. And I love listening to you, and I consider you a mentor. And so I went and got it myself. But how did this book impact your own journey of self-awareness?
Yeah, I mean, that book, which is Awakening the Buddha Within by Lama Surya Das, which was the first book I bought when I realized I'd become a drug addict and an alcoholic. I started working a 12-step program, and a week later I was traveling at the airport. I went into the bookstore. I was not a reader. I was not spiritual, but I had one of those, like, a book decides it's going to develop a relationship with you moments. And I walked over to the book and I grabbed it. And on the back of the book, it had what I didn't know at that time was the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism. And it said, number one, the first noble truth is life is full of suffering. The second is that the suffering will happen to you. The third is that there's actually a way out of suffering. And the fourth is that the way out of suffering is the Eightfold Path of Virtue, which are it's the Eightfold Path of Virtue of Buddhism. And it talks about right thinking, right speech, right action, and basically how to not operate out of a suffering state. And so all of a sudden now I had a context for what was going on in my life and what was going on in the lives of everybody that I was seeing, because it put a label on this thing called suffering. And so I became aware of suffering. I became aware of the fact that there was a way out of suffering. And that book was the beginning of like a decade-long obsession with trying to understand how all that works.
Up to this point, after the book, what's led David to the David Bear who sits in front of us right now? And I know I know two big things for you is delivering, leading with impact and value. And I know that's how you live your, that's how you drive your business for you. But up to this point, what was the growth of David in those 10 years to who you are today?
Well, I mean, first it was just getting out of addiction. So that was like milestone number one. And in that process, I learned a number of things. I developed a relationship with a higher power, which then later became God, which for me has so many names: infinite intelligence, all that is. And and who I am. So it's one of those kind of Eastern paradoxes. It's the everything and the nothing. It's myself and all others. It's at the core of like the whole concept of oneness. So so that was and that started just giving me more capacity to even have more intelligence, because when you're in addiction, you have very limited capacity for intelligence. And as I gained capacity, I started realizing that my life had a purpose. I didn't know what it was. And I realized that what I had been doing, which was running a digital marketing company and creating online businesses, was not what I wanted to be doing anymore, because I was becoming a different person. And, then I kind of went on this really weird 3-year spiritual journey where I was meditating with monks in India and going out and sitting on red rocks in Sedona for 6 weeks, and not even really knowing why I was doing what I was doing. And it was a very confusing point in time. And then I had this like burning bush moment. It was my rise moment, where I was in Sarasota, Florida. And I'd just given a first like 4-hour workshop for friends around what I had been learning that was changing my life. And I took them through some processes, and I saw that it was profoundly transformational for them. And I was in Sarasota with Carol, and they have an event down there called the Chalk Festival. And artists will chalk incredible murals on the streets of Sarasota. And I went out one morning to get my Starbucks on like a Sunday morning, and I saw this like 9-year-old boy chalking the American flag, and I just started crying. And it was a really unusual emotional reaction for me. I wasn't a crier. I am now, but I wasn't then. And what I really got was that unless he learned what I had learned at an early age, he was going to go through the same type of like long, dark night of the soul journey that we all go through. And I got committed to helping young people live powerfully and not have to go through, decades of suffering to kind of discover who they were. And from there, I said, you know what, it's probably going to be better if I help their parents first. It's a smarter way to grow a business. They're the direct influence on these kids, and I can launch my youth program later. And then that actually gave birth to the business that we have today, where we're very serious about our mission to end suffering in the world, to help deliver the methodology that we teach to hundreds of millions of people, and to help people live their best lives.
I love your mission. Like every time I hear you say it, I'm like, yes. Like I get goosebumps when I hear you talk about your mission. I love it.
Thank you. Yeah, we're very committed to it. We're doing our second coaches certification program, which I'm really passionate about because it enables other people to go out and deliver the transformation. We've trained over 50 coaches in our methodology over the last 2 years, and we're constantly working to bridge the gap between a 20, 30, 40-year vision that we have and where we're at today.
That's awesome. That is awesome. Yep. And I'm excited because I wanted to kind of get into your topic at Rise. So for everyone who's watching, David is actually coming to Rise this year as our keynote speaker on Friday. And I wanted David to share a little bit about what you'll be talking about at Rise. I know it's going to be around the high performance and how to be a high performing entrepreneur. Can you give us some context around what your talk is at the event?
Yeah, the core of what we're going to be talking about is how to become what we call a phenomenon. And that is, how do you become someone who has freed themselves from the negative bias of the mind so that you can consistently live in a beautiful state or a powerful state of being? And then how do you use the technology of the human being to create an extraordinary vision? So, we're going to be talking about spirituality. We're going to be talking about neuroscience. We're going to be talking about, peak performance and really talking about how can you truly become your unique individual expression of infinite intelligence in the world. Because if we can get rid of all the limiting beliefs and teach you how to use the human tech properly, anything is possible. We see that there are phenomenons that we observe, whether it's an Oprah or whether it's a Michelangelo or whether it's a Socrates or whether it's a George Washington or John D. Rockefeller. And we believe that everyone has the capacity to create powerfully if they choose to in different ways. And we're going to be talking about kind of the spirit and the science behind that whole structure and making it very practical for people.
I'm excited. I'm looking forward to. I'm definitely looking forward to your talk. I think everyone's gonna be blown away because I've had the privilege to hear you speak and hang out with you for 3 days. So man, they're gonna be blown away with 90 minutes of David Bear on the stage.
Yeah, it's going to be a new talk. So I just decided that I was going to redesign it for the Rise audience. So I'm excited to deliver it as well.
I love it. Hey, so what are you working on right now, and that's exciting? That's got you excited in your business. Like, what are you working on?
Yeah, I mean, one I mentioned is the certification program. So training other facilitators in the work. The other is it's taken me about 2 years, but I now have consistent. How can I say this? We've got a funnel that's working really, really well. So, we're advertising to people who've never heard from us, moving them into our programs and doing it in a highly profitable way. So it gives us another level of scale. And now we're getting into building the brand. Like, people are starting to know about our work or, hear about David Bayer. We produced 60 really cool semi-produced videos on different topics. And so we're going to start rolling those out on social media because I have like 400 people who follow me on Facebook and like 1,100 Instagram followers. So, it's cool to start building the brand. And I think the other thing that's really exciting is through people like you who have been exposed to the work and really champion what we do, we've been introduced to other really amazing people. So we're building friendships, we're building strategic partnerships, and that's a lot of fun. And we're starting to collaborate with people.
Nice. I know you mentioned partnerships, and I got to touch on you and Carol, because that partnership is such a beautiful partnership, because you're not just business partners, but you're life partners as well. And we see it in a lot of businesses where it doesn't mesh. Like it spills over, and negative things start happening, and you see the business crumble. And for you, like, for those who are listening or watching, how do you make that relationship work? And I know it takes work to make it work, but for you two, how have you created such a beautiful life and business partnership?
Yeah, Carol's the backbone of everything that we create. She's heavily involved in creating the content that we teach. So, first, Carol and I are very different. I'm very analytical. I'm a very methodical thinker. I take complex concepts and I break them down. And now I'm becoming more and more intuitive. Carol's a very faith-based person. So, like when we created the Mind Hack program, I was working on the structure because I'm a structured thinker. And she walked in from the balcony one day after a meditation and downloaded the whole thing. And so it's a really cool thing to experience where I'm having my own experience of the work, she's having her own experience of the work, and then we come together to create what we deliver to our community. We're still figuring it out, right? So, when what you do, when you work with your partner, and when your work is your mission in the world, there are no fine lines around anything. And so what we have to consciously do is step away from the business, plan time, because we work from home too. I mean, when you think about it, like you couldn't have a more enmeshed environment, and just spend some time that's really committed and dedicated to us. Do we do the best job in the world at it? No, there's more time for improvement, but there's more opportunity for improvement. But I love working with Carol in the business. And I think the biggest thing that we just have to watch out for is that we really carve out time, because the business isn't intimate. You know what I mean? It's not an intimate environment. And so if you allow the business to spill over into your personal life too much, it'll start to eat up the intimacy. And so, we're constantly finding ways that we can carve out space, for intimacy and for no work and to be present for each other, which is hard because you can be in a space like that and all of a sudden you get another download and you're like, oh, I just had this other idea around this thing we're working on.
For sure.
And then we also, it's a beautiful life that we have. We just got back from Paradise Valley, Arizona with 100 people in our legendary program, which is our 1-year program, all amazing human beings. So it's kind of like we're vacationing and seminaring and spending time with our friends all at the same time. So it's really amazing. Carol and I have even talked about, putting together like a 2-day intensive to teach other couples how to work together. It's also about learning what I defer to her to around, and what she defers to me. So it was pretty ugly in the beginning, but we smoothed it out quite nicely.
I love it, man. It's powerful because you guys are two very different people, but you know how to work well together. And you know each other's strengths, and you value each other's strengths, and you've been able to create this beautiful business, and it's impacting so many lives. Now I see you now more on Facebook, and I see you now on Instagram. So I congratulate you. You're coming on board. So I'm definitely excited to see what you two come out with here in the next, in the coming years.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I don't know what it's going to be, but I know it's going to be amazing. We're obviously really excited about our event next March. We haven't even announced the dates yet, but we just finalized it. March 8th, 9th, and 10th in Orlando. We're doing the Powerful Living Experience 2019. And
can you talk about it a little bit? What is the Powerful Living Experience?
So it's an experience. We had 600 people at the last event, which was our second event. That was in January of 2018. It's 3 days of transformation. I would describe it as understanding how you operate as a human being, identifying all the limiting beliefs that are holding you back, and transforming them over the course of 3 days. There's still more work for you to do afterwards, but it's a profoundly transformational event. Getting clear on your spiritual vision and what you want to create in the world, and tapping into your internal greatness. And really understanding at a practical level this conversation around how we are powerful creators, and learning the tools and the technology to create whatever it is you want to create in your life. So we have, the first year was interesting. We had like 350 people. And then the second year we had 600 people, because so many people who came the first year were bringing back, their family members or, other entrepreneurial friends of theirs. So I'm excited to see what happens this year. I don't want to give away any surprises, but I deliver about 80% of the event. But there's some really cool guests that show up at the event. There's some really amazing processes. It's not a normal event. There's no other event that I've gone to that is like the Powerful Living Experience, other than Tony Robbins' Unleash the Power Within or Date with Destiny, and he's got like 45 years on me. So, it's but it's an experience.
I'm excited, man. I'm definitely gonna have to make it out there in March.
Yeah, cool. And you can go to powerfullivingexperience.com, and you'll see the promo video that we have there. So anyway, yeah, looking forward to that as well, and really looking forward to your event in San Jose. I think it's going to be an amazing time.
Thank you. I'm excited, man. I've been, you and I have been talking, going back and forth. So I'm finally excited that the dates worked out, and we can get you out to San Jose. I think the attendees are going to be in for a treat, just like your event. My event is very different than your traditional fitness events. So I'm definitely, I'm excited, bro. I'm like getting giddy just thinking about it. So.
Hey, and listen, I just want to say, because, in the last 2 or 3 years that we've been in the space, we meet a lot of different people, and, some people, well, we try to like everyone, but some people we know are going to become like friends. Well, I mean, to be honest, I read people for a living. So I just want to express how grateful we are for you and the way that you show up in the world. You sharing your story about what happened with your daughter, and you sharing, your mission in the world, and you showing up with a level of gratitude that you show up with in the world. Like you really are an extraordinary guy. So Carol and I are just thrilled to be able to be a part of the event, and to come see what you're doing, to support you not only at the event but beyond.
I appreciate that, man. That means a lot. Thank you. Yeah. Where can people get more information about you? I know we mentioned the event, but is there a website people can go to?
Yeah, there's 2 places.
Okay.
One is our event site, which is powerfullivingexperience.com, and the other one is davidbayer.com. It's Bayer like the aspirin, B-A-Y-E-R. Yeah, simple, straightforward.
Right. Well, I'll link both of those up. So last question. I know we're a little bit running out of time, but last question. what piece of advice, I know you already did your Rise Up moment, so we're going to skip that one, but what piece of advice would David of today give David 10 years ago? And I know 10 years ago is when you were going through that journey. So what piece of advice would you have?
Yeah, it's the same advice I'd have for anyone, which is it's all going to work out. Like, it's just all going to work out. The only way it can't all work out, whatever all is different for all of us, is if we're spending all of our time worrying that it's not going to work out. It's the only way you can screw it up.
I love it.
Kind of amazing when you think about it.
It is, man. It is. I'm experiencing that right now between 2 different years of running this event, and the state I was in last year and the state I am in this year. It is completely 2 different states, because I know it's going to work out because I'm doing the right work behind it. And so it's keeping me in that state of beautiful state, not holy crap, I'm not getting any people registering. So I am a firm believer in this, as I've felt it myself over the last 2 years.
Awesome.
Well, hey, wanted to say thank you. Thank you for coming on. LaShawn was commenting, a power.
My man, LaShawn.
So I love LaShawn and Carrie. I was going to say Carol. I love Carol too. So, hey, thanks for taking time for coming on the show. And I'm excited to see you here in about a month.
Brother, can't wait to see you. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Drop some comments. I'll link everything up so you guys can get in contact with David. And I will see you all next time on Rise Up the Show. Take care.
See you, buddy.